Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. We're here for a live edition of Social Media Pie, and this is I have a couple things by the name Social Media Pie, and this is my interview series where I bring on inspiring people, that's the I in pie, to inform and educate you, and that's the I and E. So there we go. So I'm delighted because I have a special guest with me here today, Chellie Phillips. Hey, Chellie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Glad to be here with you.
Well, I am delighted to see you, and I'm just going to put a little ticker on screen. For those people that are watching, if you guys could do us a favor, drop a comment below. Let us know where in the world you're watching from, and if you're watching this live or in replay. And you can kind of let us know Social Media Pie Live or Social Media Pie Replay if you could. That lets us know the technology is working. This is one of the challenging things about virtual, isn't it, Chellie? Like, we can't really see. Is the audience, is it on? Is it working?
It is such a challenge, and it seems like we've been doing more and more of it the last few months.
We have, and we're getting better. I mean, I like this technique too because it helps me to understand if the audience is watching it, and then we also start to see who's in the audience, and that's the interesting thing about live video is we can see the number of viewers, but we can't see who they are until they interact with the post, and that's either giving it a like or a comment. And I see we're international. We've got Martin watching us from Sweden this morning. Mekda's watching from Columbus. So I'll continue to pop those comments on screen as we're getting the conversation started here, guys. Thank you guys so much for doing that. Really appreciate it. So usually when I bring someone on the show, it's someone I know fairly well. And in the case of Chellie, it's actually a little bit different. So Chellie was actually introduced to me by way of Marlo Higgins, who I had on the show a while back, and I'll drop her link in the comments below. But after I interview my guests, I send them an email and I'll say, great chatting with you. If you think of anyone else who might be a great guest for me to have on my show, let me know. And she replied back right away with Chellie Phillips. And I looked at Chellie's profile. I think we connected on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, this would be a great person to have on the show. So Chellie, I'm just getting to know you, but I love these kind of conversations because it does kind of help to have not just a conversation with you one-on-one and me, but lets the world know a little bit about you. So Chellie, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business?
Yeah, so professionally, I've been in corporate public relations for over 20 years. And what I've been able to do is take that experience and leverage with something that I have a passion with, which is career development and developing your own personal career brands. And I really got started with that several years ago. I was a sorority advisor on a college campus in Alabama. And I had over 200 women that were coming through the doors every semester. And what I was seeing more and more is that they would graduate from college, they've put in the work, they got the degree, and then they wouldn't be able to find a job and their career failed. And then more and more they would take a get-by job, what I call a get-by job, whether it was a barista or in retail or something like that. And what we were finding in the surveying is that they were continually staying behind all their counterparts who were able to actually get that first job in their degree field. And studies show that you could be even like $10,000 behind, and you'll stay that way throughout your career. Wow. Because your raises and all are based on what you were making when you came in. And so it really forced me to kind of start looking at this and how can I help them develop themselves? How can I get them to develop their own career brand so that they can really stand out in the eyes of recruiters and hiring managers? And from there, it's just evolved.
That's wonderful. And you guys, if you look, I just put a profile up on screen. So in case you want to connect with Chellie, you can kind of find her on here. And this was immediately what hit me. And I'm like, you've got such an amazing LinkedIn profile. It's very clear what it is that you do. You're a career brand strategist and you're an award-winning author. It looks like, is this your book, Get Noticed, Get Hired?
It is. That's my book. That's kind of I call it the Successfully Ever After formula that you follow to set yourself up for career success. And when you build that award-winning profile that you're going to make for yourself, it'll follow you throughout your career and grow with you.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm going to pick up a copy of it myself, but I want to invite our viewers, in case you're interested, check that out too. But let's jump into the conversation here today. I'm going to push the topic. Actually, it's right up above us on screen here. Today, we're going to be talking about communicating your worth in the workplace. And you've already set us up for this conversation, Chellie. And I have to admit, when I first saw the topic, I was like, oh, there's so many people that struggle with it. My inclination is I feel like women struggle with this more than men. Maybe I'm mistaken. What do you think?
No, I think that's true. And a lot of the research will back that up. And part of that reason is, a lot of times we don't make ourselves very visible. We wait for someone else to come to us to offer that opportunity. Or, like in if you're applying for a promotion or something, that a lot of women won't apply for a promotion if they see a list of requirements, if they don't have every single one of them. While men, it's tend to show if they have like 50% of them, they say, heck, why not? Let's go try it and see what happens. And so, my whole goal is to set, especially women, because, like I said, I got my start working with college women. And, it's very important for me to, teach them how to be very visible and how to set yourself up and grow that confidence so that you feel like if I got 50%, I deserve my shot too.
Sure. And it's funny how you say that. I've heard that statistic a lot too. Like it's, do I have all of the qualifications? And even if it's just like you're missing one, sometimes we as women won't apply for those positions. But I assume this is part of the conversation too, is not just for people, new candidates coming in for a position, but I imagine communicating our value in the work and our worth in the workplace is also something we should be focusing on throughout our career, right? I mean, not just when we land the job, but while we're working, because if we want to, especially if we want to move up or get a promotion, right?
Exactly. I hope everybody has found that career that they just love doing what they do and love showing up every day. And that's where they want to stay and that's where they want to grow. And this conversation is really about that. The things that you can do to communicate your worth in the workplace today so that your supervisor, your boss's boss recognize the value that you bring to that organization. Because if you're showing that value and, you're showing them how you're adding to their bottom line, you're increasing their productivity, and you're doing all these things, they're going to look for more opportunities to give you so that they can continue to use and add value to their organization.
So, Chellie, like we're talking about value and making sure your boss knows your value. I've heard some people say, I don't need to tell them I want a promotion. They'll give it to me when they feel that I'm deserving of it. Or, the bonus I get will be set based on what they think I deserve. Because they know I'm a hard worker. They see me working hard. So I'm just going to kind of sit back and wait for it. What do you think about that?
Hey, you may be sitting there waiting for a long time. I hate to say it, but sometimes the shiniest gem is the one that gets picked up, or the horn that blows the loudest. And I'm not, by all means, I'm a good Southern girl and my mom raised me. You don't go around bragging about yourself and that kind of thing. But there's a difference in making sure that you're being seen and making sure that the numbers that you're producing, the outcomes that you're receiving are being noticed by the right people. By all means, I don't mean that you should send an email to your supervisor every week and says, hey, I answered 42 phone calls this week and nobody was mad. What I'm saying is you need to be very diligent in making sure that you're tracking your successes, that you have numbers that are very quantitative so that when you go into these reviews or you go into these evaluations, you're having something that you're making someone actually physically recognize, hey, you are providing value. And there's a lot of things that you can do along the way throughout the year that can add to that. So when you're having the discussion, it's more like you're reminding them of what they've been seeing the whole year so that, it's even more emphasized. And they'll be like, you'll be the first one, the top of mind person that when that promotion or that raise comes around, that they're willing to give that to you.
Yeah. That's a good point. They have to know it all the time, because you never know when that moment will come up, or when there's a management discussion where they're talking about restructuring or who's promotable, I should say at this point, or, where do we see leadership potential? Those don't always happen, do they, Chellie, at performance review time? I mean, sometimes they happen at other times during the year, would you say?
Yeah, sometimes that, it can be just, that something is changing in that business environment and they need to adjust to it kind of on the fly. Maybe a new project's landed, or they need somebody that can handle a certain set of skills to be able to take it on and make it productive and make it successful. I tell people a lot of times that, we all think about is like, you should see what I'm doing and you should know I'm showing up. But if you think about it in a supervisory role, they have a lot of people that they're looking at. And sometimes if you're just doing your job and you're getting by, sometimes I hate to say it, but it's the problem that gets all the attention. And so if you're doing what you need to do, then, sometimes you kind of fall by the wayside because you're not on their radar. So these are some things that you can do to kind of get on that radar for all the right reasons and not for one of those problem reasons.
Okay. So give us some tips, because I know there's some people watching here today and they're like, oh, I can't brag about myself. I'm like, did she say send an email to my boss telling him all the good things I'm doing? I mean, what are some techniques that people that are struggling with this, maybe there's struggling with your inner confidence about yourself, or your self-doubting. There's imposter syndrome. I think that's going through my head. I'm sure others as well. Maybe I'm not good enough, smart enough. I'm not doing what they asked of me. I mean, what tips would you have for us? How do we do this? It sounds great in concept, Chellie, but like, how do you get to the other side of this?
So one of the first things that I suggest people do is consider making a weekly email to your boss. And this is not telling him what you do. I call it like a Monday morning check-in or something like that. Here's the top 5 things I have on my to-do list this week. And you can couch it in the fact, are these the same 5 things that you think I should be prioritizing? Is there something that I need to focus on instead? Or, and then you can follow up. I usually say follow up on Thursday. Here's where I stand on these. Is there anything for the coming week that you want me to focus on? And that way you become somebody that the boss is like, oh, I don't have to sit there and give them detailed direction every day. Oh, they're thinking proactively. They're being strategic. They're taking work off of me because I'm not having to go around and follow up on these tips. And then when you get that follow up back on Thursday, then you know how to prioritize your next week on Monday. So when if you develop a consistent, action of doing these kind of things, you really become top of mind every Monday, every Thursday on your boss's radar for all the right reasons. And that's something super simple that you can do. And, if you have a big win that week, share it. I'm not saying that you put in your email that you handled every customer complaint that came through on the phones, or, you didn't get involved with the gossip going on in the break room or anything like that. But, if you have a really true success, like if you were leading a marketing campaign and you see the sales numbers going up, drop it in there. Hey, you might want to check out these results. Look like we're getting great response, and make sure that you're on the radar for the right reasons. The other thing is if you're not quite that bold yet, you can start, we talk about LinkedIn a lot. You can start on LinkedIn and start building yourself as a positive brand ambassador for the company. A lot of times social media is the easy platform to get on and bash your employer, bash the company, bash what's going on. But you want to be known as the person that's putting out all the positives about that company. So if you keep in mind, if it's proprietary, don't share it. I don't want anybody to get in any trouble. But
right.
If the company lands a good project and it's public knowledge, share it out. If you play some part or some role in that, share what you're doing to be involved and how excited you are. And
Can
share
I add to that too, Chellie?
Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. Could I add to that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times organizations, they have a marketing department or, an agency or somebody who's running the company page, which is actually doing what you're talking about. They're pushing out company news, announcements, happy news and product achievements and things like that. They're on the company page. So a really easy thing for you to do as an employee is just to go and find one of those company page news items and just share it, and then put a little bit of your own text at the top of it. A lot of people forget about that, or they think, well, I'm not going to share my company page post. That doesn't look good, or they may not want me. Oh my gosh, the marketing department will be like, bravo, Chellie, thank you for it, right?
You'll become their new best friend, I promise you.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I going back to the email, I love that too, because I know sometimes your manager or the leader of the company, they're busy, and they're, like you said, they're managing so many people. Even if they don't read that email every Monday and every Thursday, if you use the same subject line, and they can sort and find them quickly. And that way, when they're going into that leadership team meeting and talking about promotions and items, they can quickly pull a couple things up, and they'll know those things top of mind. Or even on their update meetings with other leaders of the company, they'll know, well, Brenda sent me this email, so I know exactly where we are on those products. I think that's a brilliant, brilliant tip.
Absolutely. And, when you're talking about that, one of the big things that you can do to show your value and that you're wanting to learn and grow in a company is look for mentors inside that organization. And we've had a lot of talks about the difference between mentors and sponsors over the years and that kind of thing. Sponsors are people that'll talk about you when you aren't in the room. Mentors are the ones that you go to learn and grow from and that kind of thing. You really need both of them in your career. And so it's a really good thing if you can start looking for those opportunities, look for that next level. Who's at the next level that I want to emulate that's doing a really good job? And then look for places cross departments. You don't want to just stay in the department that you're in. Look for advocates that you can build relationships with that are throughout that company. You might not want to stay in the same department forever. And if you have these relationships that have been nurtured over, the time that you've been there, then they're more than likely going to let you know, hey, something's brewing. You might want to check this out. You've developed the relationship. They know that you're dependable. They know that you're engaged, and they're going to be helping you out too. And so that's just another way that you can become, it's like almost internal marketing for yourself. Yeah. And, it's the same thing that we do networking externally. We look for opportunities when we're at chamber events or we're at conferences or different things like that to meet people that are in our industry, but we don't really do it as much internally. And sometimes those connections can be even more beneficial for you when you're wanting to get ahead and show your value. Not only are you showing that I can do my current job, but I'm also can be of value to multiple places in this organization.
That's true. And you never know where the future may lead. And you might, some of those alliances that you build that work in a different department, they may leave the company, right? And then land in a new position. And that position is looking for somebody in customer service, in IT, in marketing, whatever your role is. And they might go, gosh, that Chellie was really wonderful. I wonder if she would ever think about me, right? You never know, right?
Yeah, you never know who you're going to be working for. Like while somebody may just be a mid-level supervisor right now, while you're building that relationship, 5 years from now, they could be head of that department. And so if you've been the one that's been on their radar this whole time, who do you think they're going to bring along with them?
That's a really good point, Chellie. I like that. And I'm popping a couple of these tips up on screen to make it easy for folks as we're having this conversation today. And I want to encourage the audience that's watching, if you guys have questions or add-ons to any of these tips, feel free to add them on. But I love this approach, Chellie, because these are quick action items that we can give people. And if they're struggling, it's like, oh, I can do that, right? It makes it a little bit easier for them.
The other thing that I realized too is that, people don't keep track of their successes. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, like we decide, okay, I'm going to change jobs or I'm going to do something. And then it's a mad rush to try and build out your resume showing, well, what did I do? What were my wins? How can I quantify these kind of things? And so I really urge people, it's not really journaling, but it is kind of to a sense, we all have our planners, or I guess we all do. I'm still a paper girl, despite all the digital stuff. I can't get rid of all my paper and pencils. And maybe it's the writer in me too. I don't know. Yeah. But, at the end of each week, I try to jot down in my planner, like, what were some of the big wins for that week? And that way, when I go back, when it becomes evaluation time, or when it becomes time to put together my resume, or when it comes time to update my LinkedIn, because, the worst thing that we can do is build those pages and never do anything with them. You need to update them and keep them fresh and keep them current. Is I got all this information right here to look at and glean from and be able to build from, because I promise you, if it's been a couple of years, you've forgotten about something that you've done that could be, very impactful on your next step. And so I'd really encourage people to take a few minutes and go back if they haven't been doing it, and really, just make a success tracker. You don't have to show it to anybody but yourself, and then you have that bad day at work too. And then you can pull out your success tracker and go, okay, I am valuable. Sometimes we need that reminder ourselves. Something might go wrong. And we're very quick, especially women, to internalize, what did I do? What caused this? And that kind of thing. And then we start to doubt why we did it, or what caused it, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not adept enough to handle this kind of program or situation. You can pull that tracker out that you've got going, and you'd be like, no, hush, 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 that little voice that's going on inside of your head, and be like, no, I've managed all these things and all these great accomplishments. This was just a minor setback, and I'm going to learn from it and grow from it and build from that.
I love it. And I think so many people focus on the to-do list, like what I'm going to do this week. And we neglect the accomplishments list. I think it's kind of a companion of one and of the other. So as you're crossing things out, some of those items can go into that accomplishment list. And I love that you're using a printed, because it almost does become a diary. And I imagine you probably have these planners that you put in a box somewhere, but then you pull them out, right, when you need to kind of review the year or the past few years, and you can kind of look at those, right?
Yeah, I recently moved about 4 years ago, and I hate to say I felt like a pack rat because it was like I have like even like some of my first job planners and stuff like that, and so it's like
Yeah.
a 25-year review of, hey, here's my career in a box kind of thing.
Isn't it funny it's interesting to look back at those things because you may look at, some of your earlier career accomplishments and you can probably even read into how you were feeling at that moment. And you're like, well, that wasn't as big of an accomplishment as I thought. I mean, I really did some really amazing things there. And you're able to, time and distance reflect upon some of those things. Or you might go, wow, she was really impressive. Why wasn't I confident about myself? Look at all these great things that I did, right?
And it's a great way to track how you've grown. That's the one thing I always tell people too, is that you need to be a perpetual learner, and so, LinkedIn's another one of those places where you have a great opportunity with LinkedIn Learning that you can get on there and you can get certifications, you can update your skills. And, if you're being very strategic, which is one of the things that you need to do to show your value in the workplace, you know what your company's values and missions are, what their corporate goals are. So what can you learn that makes you an even stronger resource for them? And when you have these online opportunities, and a lot of them are free for the taking, you just have to invest your time. You can add a certification, you can do these kind of things that will actually grow you as an employee and increase your worth and increase your value. And then when you show up and show your boss, hey, I completed a certification course on XYZ, when this project comes up that they need these particular skills because they're coming because you've been following your corporate goals and you know what their objectives are, then you're going to be top of mind for the person that's going to be put to handle that project.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Keeping your skills fresh. And I think it's even like, it reminds me of when you first graduate from college, and a lot of times you're like, I don't know what I want to do. And the career counselors will say, well, what do you enjoy? Which were your favorite classes? And let's just pick something, because it's not going to be the job that you're going to be in for the next 40 years, but pick something that sounds interesting and you can always change later. And I think it's the same with certification paths, right? If there's something that interests you, maybe you work in marketing, but graphic design has always interested you. Well, find a course in it and learn some skills. And you never know when you can start to bring those skills into your current role. Or to your point, your manager says, we need someone to help us with animated designs. And you're like, oh, I just learned how to do that. Mm-hmm. Right? So it helps you to kind of cross I don't want to say cross-pollinate, but make yourself accessible in different areas of expertise that weren't part of your core position, right?
Absolutely. It's one of those things, you have to stay fresh. And you think about how much technology's changed just over the last 5 years and what it'll be like 5 years from now. Oh, yeah. I would have never thought that I would have been building websites. I would have been doing video. I would have been, streaming, using streaming platforms. I mean, you just think of all the things that have taken place that I just use to do my daily job, not only my personal job that I have, but even my corporate career that's in PR. The tools have changed and you've had to grow with them. And so, it's really behooves you to stay relevant in the field that you're in and be ahead of the trends, know what's coming. I tell people a lot of times that if you can watch for the trends and you can prepare for them so they don't sneak up on you, and it's really cool if you can go to your boss and say, hey, I know this is going to be a thing, a couple of years down the road. I'm preparing for it now. You become a strategic partner at that point in time in the success of your organizations. You also become a problem solver, because if you're looking for these things, then your boss knows that, hey, they're keeping up on it. I don't have to keep up on it for them. They're actually finding the solutions. And so, when you're doing your profiles and different things like this, or you're looking for a job, they have all these key soft skills that they want to make sure that you've enveloped in your growth and that kind of thing. Problem solving, creative thinking, all of these kind of things are things that companies want to hear. That's what they're looking for in their new employees that they're going to go hire. So why would they not want to see it in the employees that they have inside the organization already? Because most corporations do have a policy. If they can promote internally, they'll do that first before they ever look outside.
That's a really good point. And I think some people, Chellie, they start to get almost like, I don't want to say stale in their jobs, but it's kind of like that. Like, you're there for so long, you know what you're supposed to do and you're not supposed to do. What works, what doesn't work. You kind of become like almost frozen a little bit, and then you might you might not, I don't want to say give up on looking for the trends, but you might not care, right? And looking for it. So let's talk a little bit about, I mean, what advice do you have for people on, we're talking about knowing your worth in the workplace, but when is it time to move on? And when is, maybe you're trying to do these things to get yourself promoted and you're hitting walls, and maybe it's time to find a promotion elsewhere, right? Like, when is it time to think about exiting the company? What advice do you give people on that?
Yeah, you mentioned it kind of in a passing just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
When you pick your career path at 18 or 21, do you really know what you want to do and what you're going to enjoy for the rest of your life? And so I think one thing is that there's a stigma that goes, well, if I'm changing careers, especially after a certain amount of years, is that there's a little bit of failure involved with that. Maybe I didn't pick right. Maybe I didn't, I wasn't smart enough in how I was planning for my future and that kind of thing. And that's one thing that I wish that people would really just kind of throw out the window. You are who you are, and we grow, and our thoughts and our abilities and our strengths all change as we've been, we have our life experiences and that kind of thing. But, if you find yourself kind of getting complacent, I'm showing up day after day, I'm doing the same thing, I'm bored with what I'm doing. Maybe you have a management change and the direction of the company is going in a way that, maybe you don't either agree with, or it's not a priority that you find enjoyable to work at. Or maybe there's just no challenge in your day-to-day anymore. You could have a reason, your family life could have changed. Maybe you need a different financial setup, and getting a promotion that might not be available at your current place of business is not an option, and you need to look elsewhere to kind of do that kind of thing. So all the things that you've been doing internally can set you up for success externally as well. Because if you've been tracking your successes, that when you're putting together any kind of resume or anything like that, you have to have quantitative data to show what my accomplishments have been. So you have that information that you can build out this intriguing resume that shows that you have the qualities that this other company or this other position might be looking for. If you've also been working on your network, both internally and externally, we all know that the majority of jobs are not filled by going online to all the, the big mega job sites, filling out an application and hitting submit. They come from connections. So the best thing that you can really do is to build that network that you have around you and build it early and let it grow with you. Reach outside of the box, so to speak, like cross industries if you can at different events and that kind of thing, because what you're doing in one place might totally translate into a job in another industry that you may not have thought about, but the skills transfer. And that's what I tell people a lot of time is when you find a job that you're interested in, don't look at the title so much or what the expectations are. Look at the skills they're asking for and see how, you might be calling it something different where you are, but maybe it's the same thing, like, whether it is increasing productivity and different things like that. You can look at that and translate those different skills into a different job set if you just really stop and think about it. I tell people all the time is just go through those job postings that you see, make a list of what they're asking for, and then take another moment and actually write out beside them 2 or 3 examples of how you've demonstrated that currently where you are. That's going to help you so much more when you start building out this information, when you start writing cover letters, when you start, making these connections at different places, that kind of thing. You have this information right at hand, top of mind, so that you can have real conversations with people about the value that you could bring to their organization too.
I like that. And it gets your brain kind of warmed up for those conversations because they're going to happen in the interviews. And someone's going to say, well, this position is really strongly focused on increasing productivity. What examples can you give us of times that you've increased productivity? Specific examples they're going to look for that. So it kind of warms your brain up, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. In communications, everybody wants a strong communicator. That's one of the things that translates into so many different industries, whether it is communicating with employees, whether it's external communications with vendors or, clients. If you can show and demonstrate, like strong communication skills, both written and verbally, that's something that's going to be very transferable for you no matter what career path you take to.
And I love this theme of transferable skills. I've heard some people too, Chellie, say if you're thinking about making a career move or, pivoting, maybe you're not as happy in your job, you want to explore different paths. Think about, making a list of all the skills that you have that you'd like to use in your next job. So maybe I worked in PR and one of the skills was developing and launching a press release, but I didn't really like that part. But I did like digital media. I did like posting announcements on social media. So that was a skill that it would be transferable, in the role of a PR practitioner that I could use in a different role. Related to that, I think, these if you're keeping these diaries or journals of accomplishments, you could probably go through and say, these were the things I put as accomplishments. And there's probably things in there you didn't put because you did them, but you weren't proud of them, or they weren't your shining moments for you. They didn't, make you glow from within, right?
Oh, I can give you an example right off the bat. Annual reports. I absolutely despise putting together an annual report. It's spreadsheets. It's a bunch of information that I don't think anybody ever is really going to look at. It's 24 pages of a waste of my life and months of work put into those. And so while it was an accomplishment to finish it, get it printed, get it mailed, get it out, that kind of thing, it's not something that I would want to spend my day doing every day, every month, or anything like that. So, so when you start looking at those kind of things, the things that you don't want to focus on is also that other list that you need to have. Not only the things that you do, but the things that you don't ever want to have to do again, or at least in very limited amounts of time that you have to spend on them. The other thing I tell people when they're getting ready to change jobs or they're thinking about making a career change is to think about the things that are non-negotiable to them. Like what kind of benefits do you want to make sure that are you matching what you have now? Do you want something more than what you have? COVID has brought about a whole new expectation in the job market. People have kind of been rethinking about what matters to them, whether it's family time, whether it's flex time, whether it's work from home, whether it's more vacation, whether it's, the medical benefits. There's a whole lot now that people are thinking about and willing to ask for, and companies are willing to give. If you do some of that planning ahead of time, you can really build yourself a nice success package, someplace that you're going to enjoy showing up, you're going to enjoy doing the work, and can provide you what you're looking for.
That's a really good point. And when we think oftentimes about benefits, we're thinking salary. And the only thing we think to negotiate is salary. But what I'm hearing you say is there's other items that we could, be bringing into that discussion about the package. Now, is that just for new employees, or could you, as an employee who's been with an organization for 5 or 10 years, can you negotiate benefits, or is that not possible? What do you think?
Your main benefits, like your retirement insurance, that kind of thing, are going to be set. But I definitely think there's room now to talk about flex time. I think there's room to talk about, maybe we set it up where I work in the office 3 days and I'm at home 2 days, or maybe it's an every other week situation, depending on what the requirements for the job actually are. I think people are more willing to have those conversations now because they've seen over the last year that they can really work, and that people, studies are even showing that people are more productive. They're getting more work out of them at the home situation than they are in their own, in their cubicles and in their offices. It's kind of been proved we have less distractions that way, despite the dog and kids and everything else going on at the house. You don't have the phone calls. You don't have people walking in and out of your office. You don't, you don't go to the break room. You don't, you're not getting stopped and having all these multiple conversations. So your productivity is actually greater than what it was when you were actually in the office doing the same thing. So I think you'll see more companies be more flexible with what they're willing to offer and what they're willing to negotiate, especially when you get on up into some of your senior management positions.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Well, and I think we have all seen a big change over the past year, and the employees that are being flexible are the ones that are winning. And Chellie, I this hour is really flying by. I want to start to open this up to employee, I should say, audience participation for those people who've been watching us. And I put a ticker. If you guys have a question or you'd like to add to the conversation, feel free to drop your comment now. And I think there's so many aspects of this conversation here today that we've talked about already. I'm going to pop into the questions and see. I'm going to stop my questions because I know I have a couple more, but I see there's a few comments that are being added in here. Let me just see if I can pull a few of them up. And I'm going to pull us up into a slightly different view so we can read a few more of these comments here. Sue is just adding, and now we're doing, do you remember that show, TV show Home Improvement? Remember Wilson from the TV show where he had to look over the fence to see, we always saw like this version of him. So So when we get the long comments on StreamYard, I wish they would collapse and make them a little smaller, but when they're long, they just expand more of the screen. So Sue is agreeing with you about tracking and document your successes. She's recommending an expanded resume. So let's talk about this resume length. I mean, 1 page, 2 page, 10 pages. Is there too much? Is there too little? What are your thoughts there? And do you work with people on resumes too, Chellie?
I do. And, I will say pretty much the standard is if it's over 2 pages, it better be for like a really senior level position or some professional, doctor, lawyer, those kind of things where you're showing a history of that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a lot more information than that to share. I just wouldn't put it on paper. If you're in the middle of changing careers, one of the things that we all look at is like age discrimination. So if you have 15 jobs on there and they go back to, 1970 something, people will do short math and you don't want to give them a reason to automatically, which I know it's illegal, but it happens that, to go ahead and kick you out of that. So I would say focus on maybe your last 5 positions at most, with your most current one being the one that you provide the most detail about. And make sure you're doing that where like you're providing that quantitative information on accomplishments. Like if you were going into a social media position, you could say that I've helped my current company gain traffic, by X percentage, and we've had success in certain programs that increase sales by whatever dollar based on our social media performance. Make sure you have something that is very trackable and very analytic, because you want to provide that meat to somebody when they're going through that. Now, you also have a cover letter that you normally send with that. I call it your personal marketing material. And, it's just like brochures and flyers that we have for when we're doing PR campaigns and things like that. When you build out that cover letter, use examples from other jobs so that you can show a well-rounded diversification of your skills and that kind of thing. Plus, it gives you, if you've got that list going and that tracker going, when you get into the interview situation, it gives you so much wealth of knowledge to pull from, because everybody is looking at behavioral based questioning now, where they want examples of how you did these things and how you showed these things in the workplace. And so if you have that, it's going to prepare you even that much more for those positions as they become available.
Great point. And I just want to pop a couple more comments. IO agrees. Using a month-by-month tracker and then using sent emails to add on to your earlier point. Marilena is mentioning, about performance reviews. How do you pull together this information? And she's saying, if you don't want to have all these emails printed and maybe you want to have some organization, so should you have a binder, maybe 3 sections: weaknesses, overcame, problem solve, future goals? What are your thoughts on that, Chellie?
I mean, that's a great idea. It's really whatever works for you. If, like I'm a paper person, I really like my paper. And so me having a binder with sections, this is an accomplishment, this is something I need to work on, or here's something I really want to learn, here's a future skill I think I need. I mean, that would be perfect, but some people are very digital. Keep a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet going that shows, here's my wins for the week. Here's, where I feel like I need to work on, and because, when you go into those evaluations, not only do you want to talk about your wins, but you want your supervisor or your boss to realize that you have a very clear picture of who you are. And if you can come in there and say, I've identified this as my weakness, and I want you to help me work on this and build myself into a better employee. I mean, just think, you're going to walk out of there and that person's going to be going, wow, like they did my work for me. I don't have to help them with their training and their education and figure out what it is. They've identified it for me. And it makes them look that much better when they go to their boss and say, hey, I'm getting training for them, and this is going to make them that much better and more productive. So it's a win-win on both situations. And so whatever version works for you, there is no perfect or right or wrong way to track those kind of things. It's just what feels right to you.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you for commenting on it. And thank you guys for the questions too. Keep them coming. And we got a couple more minutes left here. Sue, going back to the point of the resume, he says, she's sometimes seen a resume of 2 pages. And I use this approach when I was in corporate America applying for jobs. Whenever I would send a resume out, it was no more than 2 pages, but I would have like a master resume that I would pull information from. And then depending on the focus of the position or the industry or the keywords they were looking for, I would kind of cut and paste from my master version of placing it in there. And I think I even had like an Excel spreadsheet at one point. If they were asking for digital marketing or public relations skills, I would pull this statement.
Yeah, I totally agree with a master that's got everything you've ever done on it.
Yeah.
But if you're getting ready to apply, I would stick with that shorter one and then wow them in person once you're there in front of them in the actual interview thing. But yeah, I mean, because like I said, if you're not tracking it, you'll forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us remember, our very first job and what we did? And, for me, that was in newspaper. And so, I look back on that now, and that's where I learned interviewing and conversation and, storytelling, which became very pivotal in the corporate PR side. And so even what I was learning right out of college had an impact on what I've been able to do in the future. And so I think it's really fun too, like when you sit down, like think about retirement day, just look back on what all that you've done and go like, oh, look at me, So let's celebrate all these accomplishments.
You just made me think of an interesting question. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask the audience watching us. And whether you're watching live or if you're watching playback later, guys, I want you to drop into comments right now and share with us, what was your first job out of college and what do you do now? Because it's probably something different. I even think back, like when I went to college, when I entered college, my intent was to work in international business. I had no idea what. I had taken 4 years of German in high school. I liked my marketing classes. I'm like, I don't know, international, I have no idea what I'm going to do, right? And when I graduated, I worked in media planning for an ad agency. That was my first job. And what I do now is I'm an independent marketing consultant. I do LinkedIn coaching. So I'm much different. And I do work with clients internationally. So I guess I am in international business. But Chellie, how about you? What was your first job out of college? And how does that compare to what you're doing now?
Oh my gosh. So my first job out of college was I did morning radio news at a top 40 station.
Oh,
and I learned very quickly that 3:30 a.m. wake up calls were not for me. Yeah. Of course, you were done with your day about 9 o'clock in the morning too. So, but you by the time all your friends were getting up and going out and doing all this other kind of stuff, getting off for work, it was time for you to get ready to go to bed because you had to be up at 3:30 the next morning. So while it was fun and I had a lot of great adventures, I went from there into newspaper and then from there into PR. And then now I've started my own company doing career coaching and career development. So it's been quite a path, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of look back and connect the dots, I mean, sometimes it's hard to kind of think about the journey unless you kind of do that time of reflection. But I mean, there's probably skills that you learned from that very first job, right? That you still use today, that you used in other jobs and other journeys along the way. And there's probably some skills that they're they weren't things that you enjoyed doing, so you're no longer doing them, right? And they're different. That waking up at 3:30 in the morning, for example, and being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go, and right?
Yeah, that's what I don't want to go back to. I could if I had to, but I don't really want to.
Right.
And that's one of those things when you look about how technology has changed and how you adapt. When I first started in radio, it was reel to reel, and you were actually cutting and splicing the tapes together to make the interviews and that kind of thing. Now you hit a button and record, and everything is digital. And you look in the studios today, they don't look anything like they looked when I was there. Well, we won't go exactly how many years ago, but a lot of years ago.
It was a couple of years ago. I think, I like, and I'm even kind of kicking around a topic about, I do these LinkedIn live-a-thons, Chellie, where I bring in a bunch of different speakers, and the max you can do on StreamYard is 4 hours. So that's the longest time I'm doing, but I'm thinking about doing a LinkedIn live-a-thon for job seekers who are experience rich, not mature workers, but experience rich, those people that have a lot of career experiences they've gained, because you can look at, it's like the glass is half full or half empty, right? You can look at it from the experience of mature workers, which says something, or you can say experience rich. We've been around the block, you and I, right?
Yes.
we have a lot of experiences. That's impressive. We should be celebrated as experience rich individuals, I should say.
I like that. I'm going to steal your phrase, experience rich.
Feel free. And I may reach back out to you, Chellie, too, to see if you'd like to come back on and join us for the discussion, because I think the topic today, communicating your worth in the workplace. This is a valid conversation for anybody who's still within the workplace, whether you're just getting started, whether you're experienced rich and you've been in for a long time and you're maybe trying to position yourself for that promotion or for a career move. And then there's a whole other category of those individuals who've been impacted by the pandemic, who are finding themselves re-entering the workforce, right? not or not by choice. They're being pulled out of what they've been in, and they have to re-enter and figure out how to get that path back in. Is that a group that you've been helping out with as well over the past year?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's been showing up more and more. And I've seen it's affected women more than it has men because, they tend to be the primary caretaker in the home.
Yeah.
And so with women having to deal with virtual learning for the children at home, maybe being the caretaker for other people in the family who have been sick, it seems to have predominantly affected them more than it has the men. And so what they're seeing too is that, they're taking a hard look and revaluing what matters to them. And, they don't want to go back to a company that thinks that if I have to be off with my family, that's a detriment.
Yeah.
They want somebody that celebrates the fact that I have committed and accountable people that are working for me. And they also want places that healthcare is a priority or that they're adaptable to the changes that are happening in the world around them. And so, we've been doing a lot of work with them as they come through on rebranding themselves. How do I deal with this question in the interview, whether it was a layoff or whether it was, a self-imposed, I'm going to take this time off to be with my family because it's just the best way for us to navigate during this time. And so, it's one of those things that I think, especially for another year or so, we're really going to be dealing with in the workplace as far as, workforce development and that kind of thing. What are we going to see when we're interviewing? What are we going to see that's missing? Because we have a segment of people that are taking some time to really reevaluate what they want to do. We keep hearing that this is going to be the resignation generation.
Yep.
Because, people are like, okay, I'm fed up with the way it was. I've kind of enjoyed these aspects of what's happened right now. And this is what I want to find before I continue, my career path. And so I think you're going to see, some more changes coming down the road, both on the corporate side and both on individual sides. We go back to, what are my absolutely have tos? What are my non-negotiables? I think you're going to see that become a bigger and bigger discussion as we move forward from all that's been going on in the workforce right now.
Yeah, because it has been a bit of a, pause, reflect. And now, it's been a traumatic time for all of us, whether you've been impacted directly or indirectly, not being around people for a long time and now starting to be around people. And, we're going in this little bit of this wave right now too. But you raised a really good point. I think it's causing a lot of us to reflect upon what do I enjoy and what do I not enjoy. And where more of us are feeling comfortable drawing the line in the sand about where, where we want, we're looking for certain features of jobs and benefits and things like that. And lots of great thoughts on the conversation. So Chellie, as we start to wrap up here today, I pulled up your LinkedIn profile up on screen. Are you open to accepting invitations from people, or what's your kind of philosophy there?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have new people join. I share a lot of information, blog a couple of times a week. You'll get information that way, kind of thing. And you can find access to all my resources through LinkedIn and my website.
And I'm going to pull up your website next here because I just had it up in the background, and I'm doing the piloting, co-piloting thing in the navigation in the background here. I'm going to try to keep one screen so that we're not, oops, I think I missed an M on your web address. Please hold. Here we go. I never make mistakes, you guys. If you watch me on my LinkedIn Live, you know that I never make mistakes. I have learning experiences. My learning experience just now was that when you grab a web address, if you drop off the M in .com, your website does not load. So there's my learning experience for that.
Absolutely. I just did a program with one of the local chambers here. It was their diversity and inclusion summit. It was building women leaders in the workforce. Yeah. And one of the things I talked about, WD-40 has what they call learning moments, that there are no mistakes as long as you're learning from them. So they share learning moments, whether it's here's the mistake, here's what's happened, this is what I learned from it and how we're going to make sure it doesn't happen and how we're going to move forward, or whether it was a learning moment that was a huge success and we're going to continue this because it was a great thing. I think that's absolutely fabulous.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, Chellie, as I'm looking at your photo, I've noticed, are there little hints of purple in your hair in this photo on your homepage, or is that my computer screen playing tricks?
Well, it could have been the gray picking up the light,
No, I see. I had, and the reason I said mine are all grown out now, but I had like the pink tones planted in my hair. It could just be my computer screen coloring. But isn't it funny how so many of us we added color to our hair, like different colors, blue, pink, orange, red. Like we did all these different things during the pandemic. And I don't know if it was just, we got sick of, just looking at myself on camera all the time. I'm like, I need something in a change that's different. It's probably my computer coloring, Chellie.
Well, I have had pink. So I was trying to remember if this is when this picture was taken, if it could be remnants from the light pink that I had in there at one point in time. I did streaks of pink because I'm like, all my millennials that work with me and everything, I can't let them have all the fun. I need to have a little bit too in life. So.
And I want to just point out on your website, I see there's a link that says free resources. I love the word free. So do you want to tell us about anything that's on here that people might want to check out?
Yeah, sure. There's like somebody talking about keeping up with your wins and that kind of thing. There's what I call is the 2021 career planner that's on there that walks you through how to set yourself up for your evaluation and how to track your wins and how to see what you want to do. The Primed magazines out there is just helpful tips for being in the resources. I think there's 4 volumes out right now. Oh, and then if you're stuck working from home right now because of that, there's a how to work from home successfully and stay visible in the workplace checklist and some information that you can use that way too.
These are great. Lots of great checklists here, guys. And I dropped the link in the comments on LinkedIn. I'll drop it into Facebook later on, and then I'll put it in the YouTube video in the video description playback so you can come and check that out later. So lots of really great resources in here. Chellie, thank you so much. As we wrap the conversation here today, any final comments, anything, advice you want to offer to people? We've been talking today about communicating your worth in the workplace, but we really talked about a lot of things. So any final comments for the group here today?
So I would just touch back on the thing that we kind of started with is confidence. Confidence is not necessarily something that you're born with. It's a skill that you learn by practicing it over and over again. So if you're tracking what you're doing and you're having conversations, whether they're uncomfortable to begin with or not, they become easier the more you get used to having them. And so you can build that confidence and, feel secure in that you are communicating your worth in the right way and showing your value in the workplace.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Chellie, so much for being on with us here today. And I want to invite our audience. Did you guys enjoy this conversation, this discussion today? Did you get some new tips? Please drop in the comment below if you found this conversation helpful. And after you're done watching the video, you can do one thing too for me and for Chellie. And that is, after the video ends, go back onto my timeline, Brenda Meller, and you'll see there's a link to share, and you can click to share the video along. You never know who you're going to help with that simple act of sharing a post along. And maybe just say, sharing this along for those who might be thinking about, their own value in the workplace. Great tips here from Chellie. And I'll make sure to tag her if those are shared along as well, so she gets a notification of that. So Chellie, great information. Thank you so much. It was a delight getting to know you here today, and I hope to continue the conversation with you and that you have a good rest of the week.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed being here and hope that your audience found great value in it.
Oh, definitely. Lots of great tips. And I put a couple of those on screen, and those will be in the playback for all of you guys as well. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining. This is Brenda Meller here today with Chellie Phillips. I want to thank you guys for watching and remind you, if you do, at the end of the video, I'll remind you can subscribe on my website and you'll get notification of future videos in this series. And in the meantime, we will see you guys on LinkedIn. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you. And thank you, Chellie. Have a great week.
Bye.